Hi, Andrew from Sax, and welcome to video number 5 in our 10 video sequence on mental health, mental illness and psychometric assessment. And in this one we'll be dealing with stress and trauma at work. One of the things that helps us to understand stress and trauma at work is a concept called the window of tolerance. So the concept of the window of tolerance is that when people are calm and relaxed and can cope, they are within their window of tolerance. That means that the body is in its optimal state and you can access both thinking and feelings. So you're mentally engaged. But when things become too stressful, you can be hyper-aroused, which will mean that you are more overreactive and tend to be unclear in your thinking. You can be emotionally distressed, or hypo-aroused, which is where you will tend to be depressed and lethargic and numb and unmotivated. The key thing is that neurological research shows that when people have chronic stress, in other words, they experience long-term stress, this can literally shrink their window of tolerance and can mean that it's more likely that they will be triggered to be hyper-aroused or hypo-aroused, and of course, therefore, less resilient. Now, stress, we all experience stress at work, but stress in general comes in two forms, acute or chronic. So when stress is severe enough, it can become an acute stress, and an acute stress is a situation right here, right now that's making me stressed. But if you are in acute stress for long enough, it can become chronic, and that can be after only 6 months. Now, chronic stress can affect the brain in a very significant way. It can certainly kill brain cells. We certainly know that from Thomas's work in 2007 from a range of other studies, but it also tends to change the structure of the brain. And in the brain you have the white matter and you have the grey matter. And keeping it as simple as possible, the white matter could be regarded as connective tissue. It's the sort of neural pathways that hook the various parts of the brain up. The grey matter is the processing bit. If you're under chronic stress for long enough, you tend to get more white matter, connective tissue, and less grey matter. And what that means is that you're worse at solving problems. And so that's really part of the evidence that persistent stress can actually rewire the brain and changes in the process of memory. Have you ever noticed that if you're under a lot of stress, it may be more difficult to remember things? Well, that's a neurological effect. We know that strong stress can cause people's memories to be less reliable. And it can also, of course, lead to things like mood disorders such as depression and other mental illness, and also effects in the gastrointestinal system. One of the things that we've discovered in recent times is that the gut biome has a very significant effect on people's mental health. If you have a healthy gut biome, all of the bacteria and other organisms living in your digestive tract, then you're much less likely to be anxious and fearful and depressed and all of those kinds of negative emotions. And in fact, it has been even posited and done to transplant feces from a healthy person to an unhealthy person to sort of stimulate better gut biome activity, and that has proved to be successful. So traumatic stress can be caused by prolonged traumatic experience, and if this continues, your nervous system can kind of get stuck and these intense symptoms tend to linger. And so you'll end up with things like nightmares, avoiding certain situations, negative changes in emotions and belief, and also hyperarousal, where you have trouble sleeping or concentrating. So stress at work is significant. And one of the things that you can do is that you can, if a person is exposed for long enough to traumatic experiences, you can cause that person to become permanently or at least enduringly damaged. So later on, we're going to talk about the recruitment practice and making sure that we're recruiting people who are suited to stressful jobs, because a lot of that can be identified on the way into a job. In the next video, we're going to be talking about a fascinating topic, a new way of looking at mental illness. You know, earlier on in other videos, I've talked about the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual and talked about the medical model and talked about the way that people have looked into the genesis of mental illness, but we have a brand new perspective. Fascinating stuff. Click on the link near this video to join me to understand a little bit more about what we now understand about mental illness.